great panel for you all about becoming a CTO. Just to let you know what's happening with timings, I think you're with us for about 45 minutes altogether. We'll maybe do just over half an hour of discussion and then any Q&A, so make a note of your questions throughout the session. Just briefly before we get started, to introduce myself, my name is Sophie Valentine. I'm a member of London Tech Leaders Advisory Group. When I'm not doing that, I'm a product lead at Anira, which is a new women's health company. We're taking all of the ways that women's health is often not great and making it fantastic. But if you're interested to hear more about that, you will have to ask me later, because this is not about me, this is about our amazing panelists here. I'm going to introduce them really briefly so you know their names, but we will come back to them later and they can introduce themselves properly and do themselves justice. So starting at the end, we have Hema Purohit, who was a CTO at Microsoft, which I find wildly intimidating, and has additionally held tech leadership roles at Google and many other incredible organizations. She is now a NED and she runs her own tech consultancy, and we can hear a little bit more about that later. Sarah Greasley has held a number of equally impressive tech leadership roles at places like IBM and Amazon, and again, really intimidating CTO at IBM. And she now has a self-described portfolio career, which sounds wildly exciting, where you get to work with startups on topics like AI and sustainability and DEI initiatives that I'm sure many people in this room have an interest in. And then of course Nidhi Gupta, who you met.
You can skip me.
No, I've got my notes, I've got to go through them. Who has held, again, equally wildly impressive tech leadership roles. You've been a VP a very intimidating number of times. You've been a CPTO, I think that's right, which is a really fascinating role, and I'll pick your brain on that later. You've been a board member as well, and of course now you are CEO and co-founder of SheTO. So as mentioned, this is all about the panel, but it's equally about you guys. We're keen to make sure that this discussion is of interest to you, and if you've come along to a talk entitled Becoming a CTO, you may be interested in yourselves becoming a CTO at some point. So we're going to make sure that we touch on lots of topics that are of interest to you. We're going to talk about sort of motivations and what it means to pursue a career in technology. We're going to talk about what it feels like in that moment where you think, gosh, maybe can I do this? Can I be in the C-suite? We're also going to talk about failure, and we're going to talk importantly about advocacy, self-advocacy, if I can pronounce it, and advocacy for others. So let's kick off. Let's go down our panel. I'll let you each briefly introduce yourselves, and if you come back to me, and then we'll kick off our discussion. So starting with you, Hema.
Thank you for that. It's great to see you all. And I'm going to say, today's been one of those really strange days that I don't get enough of, where I started at 5 a.m. this morning, delivered a Leadership Essentials masterclass to a group of 21 women, and then I've come straight here to see another room full of women who are actually doing things for themselves. So I think, at some point, please congratulate yourselves. It's amazing. I'm always inspired when I see women do something for themselves and take time for themselves. So as I was introduced, my name's Hema. I'm not intimidating at all. I'm not even barely.
You're absolutely lovely as well.
I'm not even
intimidating because of that.
I'm not even 5'2", right? I can hardly intimidate anyone. So I've had a very varied career, and I think what I would say is that I have a tendency to push doors open. I don't like it when people tell me that I can't do something or that I shouldn't do something. So I am that person that went and knocked on doors, and when they didn't open, I just shoved them open anyway. So I probably got to where I needed to be because of that. If you have a dream about something, you should do it. And I believe that that's what you should do. So yes, I've had careers. I'm ex-Google, which is strange to be here, ex-Microsoft, Oracle, VMware. I've pretty much done most jobs that there are to do in technology. And then I figured actually it's time to go do something for myself, right? So do it without the labels, without the sales targets. And I would highly recommend it to any of you, right? So at some point in your careers, please just ditch the corporate thing, go do your own stuff, right? Other than that, what am I? I'm a foodie. If I wasn't a techie, I'd be a foodie. I'd be running my own restaurant. So I love feeding people and I love eating. The more spicier, the better, I guess.
Hi everyone, so Sarah Greasley, so great to see you all here. So where do I start? So I feel a bit like I've had two careers, because I started in tech probably 5 waves of technology ago, but I was very lucky. I worked for IBM for 31 years, and I was very lucky because I was able to come up through the technical career as an IC. and become what's known as a distinguished engineer in IBM, which is it's a very senior position within IBM that allows you to remain technical and to remain involved and do very interesting things. And then about 8 years ago, I describe it as having a rush of blood to the head. And I moved from IBM, I joined Direct Line, and I became the CTO at Direct Line, which was going through an amazing amount of change. So I ran the strategy and architecture teams, the innovation teams, and then also we did a very major program to move into cloud, right, and to sort out how do you sort out an insurance company to start to fix some of the data challenges that they had. So and then talking about doors, right? I was after 5 years there, I was like, right, I'm going to stop my corporate life and I'm going to start to move to a portfolio career and do the stuff that really interests me. And AWS came knocking on my door and said, come and run the tech teams across Europe. And I kind of went, oh, okay, I think I will. So, and that was, again, a different challenge, different culture, different way of doing things. And it was great for 2 years. But then actually, I think to Hema's point, I got to a point of going, wow, I really, I need my life back. I need to be able to do the things that I'm really interested in. We're at such a big inception point in our industry, right? Absolutely, it's going to change everything, right? Technology is essential, it's critical. AI is absolutely going to change every skill you thought you had. Every, I always say to people, know your value in the organisation. Your value is going to change immeasurably, and it's really important. So anyway, the net of that was really exciting time, and I actually wanted to be doing it rather than actually other people doing it, which is slightly different from what you heard earlier. But so I've now moved so I left AWS. I am now, focusing on the things that I'm really interested in. So working on frugal AI, working on sustainability, working on resilience, and actually, skills and growing the next generation. Right? I really am passionate about diversity. I'm passionate about getting more women and diverse people into this profession. And to do that, we have to start even earlier. So I'm working with schools to try and help to get people, girls particularly, into tech at an early age. Because if you get them early enough, then it's just really important.
I don't know what I have to add here. Let me see about my background.
So just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I am an engineer by training. I've spent a big chunk of my career, I started my career in a really, really large company, AT&T. Some of you may have heard of it. And then I slowly made my way to startups. I spent a big chunk of my career in the startup world, and that's where I grew up to be an executive. I will say the one thing that has stayed true throughout my career is the yearning for learning. And anytime that I felt that I wasn't learning anymore, I knew it was time for me to leave. And going back to Hema, what you had said earlier is do something for yourself at least once. I will tell you, I was very young, and one of my friends who's a founder, he told me, he said the same thing to me. He said, Nidhi, at some point in your career, you should start your own company. And I'm like, dude, I already work at early stage startups. I've seen it all. I don't need to. I don't think I knew what I was jumping into when I started GTO. The learning comes at you in spades. You learn something new every single day. So the one thing that's been true for me has been learning. Figure out what that one thing is for you that keeps you going, because our careers are very long and you need to make sure that you're you're growing. However you grow, you're growing every step of the way.
I think you've raised a really interesting point about the length of careers. I think it's easy when you're early in your career to sort of go, well, I have to do it right now, why am I not on the CPO yet?
Yep.
CTO. And I think it was interesting seeing Lumamira's kind of squiggly. It's a long line, it's
Yep.
squiggly, but it's long
Very
as
long.
well. So Hema, I want to come to you first. So what was it that led you to pursue a career in technology?
Are you sure you want an honest answer? I didn't want to go into technology. I'm Asian, obviously, and I have a huge family which is really nosy and wants to give advice. And I'm sure that there's a few Asian ladies in here that will smile and understand when I say I had a very well-wishing relative that told me when I was very young that I should go into technology and learn how to code C++. I didn't really like being told what to do. So I battled against it, and I absolutely, I was violently against it. I was not going to go into technology. I was going to do something amazing and be creative and, go set the world on fire some other way. And then I live in a location where the UK's HMRC office was being built behind my house. And my mum used to stand in the kitchen, cook every evening, look out and say, I think you should go work there. So I'm not going to do that, Mum. I'm definitely not going to do that, Mum. Never going to do that, Mum. I went and did that, Mum. So 4 weeks turned into 30 years of a career in technology. And I think it goes to prove that, one, you should always listen to your parents because they're always right. Don't record that and show it to my mum under any circumstances. And I think the other thing is that, technology is such a huge industry that I didn't know what it was about. I had a perception of the stereotype, I'm going to be old and boring and I won't be allowed to be creative and I'll have to just do what other people tell me to and I'll be stuck in a dark office and all, the usual stereotypes. And it wasn't that. Every single year in every single company that I've worked for has been different. There have been new challenges, there have been new exciting things. The one thing that I learned about myself is that I need to go and do the next thing that's happening before it happens. I didn't want to be doing what everybody else was doing. So, when cloud was still new, it was still a term that was being coined, I was, okay, I want to know what that is. I need to unpick it and figure out what it is because I'm a person who's comfortable when I have data and I have facts to my fingertips. I need to know what it is I'm talking about. So that level of curiosity and being nosy, quite frankly, is what got me into all of the exciting things that I did. But I probably still would answer the question and say I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah, jump in.
I think I'd echo Hema's point. I don't think there is any industry that has reinvented itself so many times during the course of my career, let alone anyone else's career. So I think, that for me is also something that's kept me in tech, right, is the way that things change so rapidly.
Yeah, I think there are definitely lots of reasons to go into tech, as attested to by this room. So I think you've raised a really interesting point, Hema, of, not only were you just kind of like not that interested, but you almost had this adverse reaction to someone else is trying to make me do it and therefore I don't want to go into tech. But you ultimately ended up as a CTO. And so I'm really interested in your journey from I don't want to work in tech to I am working in tech to, oh gosh, I'm a CTO. Did you have a moment where you suddenly realized I can get there, I can take on this role?
Yeah, I did. I had a few of those moments, if I'm honest. The first two managers that I worked for got promoted on the basis of the work that I'd done for them. My first appraisal was, you're really good at what you do so much of it and you do it really fast. Could you slow down a bit, please? Because everybody else around you feels a little bit threatened. And at first it was, okay, all right, I have to mould myself in the environment that I'm in because I want to please the people that I work with. And then my dad said to me one day, he said, why is it everybody else is being promoted around you when you're doing the work? I see you doing the work here, so surely it's you that should be promoted. And this was another one of those moments where you think, oh shit, he's right, okay. So yeah, it was like, okay, well, if I'm doing the work, actually I deserve the credit. And I learned a very important lesson that was probably around the ages of about 25, 26. If I don't advocate for myself, and if I don't go and stand up for myself and say, this, I deserve this is mine, I can't expect somebody else to do that for me. So that was the start, really, of I'm going to go and do this for me instead of doing it for other people. And I wasn't ashamed of that, and I made no excuses for that. I'm an ambitious person, I always was. I was very lucky in that I come from an environment and a family that always taught me to dream big, go try things, do things, fail fast, and it's absolutely fine to fail. But go try it, go do these things. So, that was the moment, I think, but the initial moment. The CTO thing was really strange because I never planned on becoming a CTO. And, fun fact for all of you, I don't have a degree in anything. I am self-made completely. So the last thing I ever studied was A-levels. I've gone through my career, obviously, and done, different qualifications, etc. But I worked, and for me, it was, I'm interested in this, I like that, I can do that. And every time somebody said to me, don't think you've got the qualifications to go do that role, that was the environment, that was the encouragement for me, which was, sorry, you don't get to tell me what I do and don't do. And as you can see, there's probably a little bit of a rebellious streak that I have, right? So, yes, it was as I progressed and as I became more interested in things, and actually for me, balance is important. So I'm half business and I'm half technical, and I enjoy that balance because I am too nosy to not understand the basics and the design of a solution. I want to be able to contribute to a solution, but I don't need to go and write code for it, personally. So for me, there was a combination of all of those things that came in. And then again, as I said, it was, this is the progression, right? And let's go do something different.
Yeah, really, really fascinating story. Yeah, sorry. I was going to come to you next, but jump ahead.
So I came at this from a very different point, right? So when I started, I was very focused on one technology, right? I effectively became the country specialist on a particular technology, right? And then I went on maternity leave, right? Had a year out. And when I came back, that technology was obsolete, right? So I'm like, whoa. And that was an interesting moment because I was like, coming back, and I think a lot of technical women hit this, that they come back, if they've been away for a while, whatever it is, and they come back and the technology's moved on, and you have to catch up on the technology as well. But at that point, I took a step back, and I realised that my value was not really well knowing one technology, right? It was understanding how it all fitted together, it was the architecture, it was the design, it was actually being able to sort of lift your game and think about how technologies fit together, and actually being able to know what the right questions were to ask rather than the answers. There was when I was CTO at Direct Line, there was they used to prep to come and bring stuff to me sometimes, and they asked themselves, what would Sarah say before they got in the room, rather than wait for me to say it, but asking the questions rather than knowing all the answers. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. It's not about kind of learning all of the things and being the most knowledgeable person in the room. It's kind of being strategic and systematic and thoughtful. And I want to come to you, Nidhi, on that same question of because you've transitioned into the role of CTO, and then you transitioned from the role of CTO to CEO. And so I'm interested for you, how did those transitions manifest? Did you have a moment where you realized I can be a CTO, and then later you had a moment where you realized I can be a CEO as well? How did that go for you?
So let me share a stat. When we read a job posting, a woman applies for a job if she meets 100% of the criteria, right? Guess what the number is for a man? 80%? Okay, anybody else? 30-40 would be really great. 65%. Right. We opt ourselves out. So I don't think in my career there was ever a point where I was like, oh, I can be a CTO. It was more of what Hema, you said, which is people looked at me and said, you? And I'm like, yeah, why not me? Fuck you. Right? And I hear so much talk about sponsors and mentors, yes, they can help you. But at the end of the day, you've got to walk the walk. Nobody's going to do it for you. So quit waiting for somebody to tell you you can do it. I'm telling you you can do it. Right? Just own it. So that's one. Don't opt yourself out. Opt yourself in. Second, own it. You can do it. And yes, there are lots of things that you do not know. I did not know so many things, and I made a shit ton of mistakes. And if there's one thing that I've learned from my career is if I had a community, if I had a trusted network, I would ask them and lean on them so that I could have avoided some of the mistakes that I made. The same is true for me becoming a CEO. When I started Sheetio, I said, I'm a first founder. I've never started a company. I was like, how hard can it be? Oh my God, boy, I was wrong. I was completely naive going in, just like I was completely naive becoming a first-time manager, just like I was completely naive becoming a CTO. It's not like my E-team welcomed me, my team welcomed me saying, Nidhi, yay, let's help you. No, nobody's there to help you. You gotta help yourself. Same thing. Single founder, started a company on my own, founded it as a non-profit, which means I cannot get any VC funding, so made it exponentially harder for myself. But you learn, you research. I cold call people on LinkedIn. I didn't know what growing a community and building a community is all about. And I reached out to other community leaders to say, hey, what does it take? How do I go from 50 to maybe 3 digits, right? So you just ask.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? They won't respond to you. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not personal. Even if it's personal, who cares?
I think that's a really good point, right? We don't want to talk to people sometimes, but you would be surprised. As I change career now, how people are prepared to give their time and their effort. It's brilliant, right? And these are people that I haven't, I contacted someone I hadn't seen for 25 years, and literally it was like, nope, come, let's have a coffee, let's talk about it, etc., etc. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And I will tell you, I reached out to so many people who had built communities before. They never knew me, they had never heard of me, and mostly women, thank goodness. And so many of them, they took the time, they got on a call, they gave me tips, and that's how I got started.
It's really exciting to hear, and I think we're going to talk about application for oneself and for other people a little bit later. I think you've raised, between you, a really interesting point of, you can learn it, people get that. I always think of astronauts and babies, like it's really hard to be an astronaut, but astronauts were babies, and babies are terrible, they don't know anything. So if a baby can become an astronaut, you can become a CTO. It feels like a nice rule of thumb, right?
Sophie, just to add one thing, we've talked a lot about the title. CTO is the thing that's coming up time and time again. Every single person in this room has a set of skills that are transferable. It's not about the title. It doesn't matter whether it's CTO or CEO or founder or something else. As an individual, you have a key set of skills that you're really good at. It's your DNA. You're damn good at what you do. So you can apply that wherever you want. It is literally a mindset thing. So I think a lot of women end up in different careers in technology without actually having planned it out. I didn't never sit down and have a PDP that said, one day I'm going to become a CTO. It was taking the opportunity when it came up.
Yep.
So it's those transferable skills that everybody has that you can reapply, which I think is important. I know CTO is an important role. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the only role.
Yeah, really, really interesting point. So I want to move on and talk about failure. I think it's easy to come to these events and look at incredible people, incredible women on a panel and think, well, they've never failed, look how successful they are. And I am keenly aware of all of the ways daily that I fail at things. But my guess is that you guys might have failed once, maybe twice at some point in your careers. And so I want to understand, what role did failure play in your journey? Nidhi, maybe starting with you.
Okay, here's a question for all of you. How many of you here think that maybe at some point in my career I got laid off? Show of hands. Okay, less than 10% of you, right? How many of you think I got fired? Just one. Okay, just a few. You're all leaders, you're all engineers, most of you are engineers. Show of hands, how many of you have been in an environment where production went down? Okay, excellent. When production, or maybe you took production down, because I've done that. When production went down, do you think your engineer who caused the outage was a failure? Then why is it that when we fail, we internalize that and we think we're a failure? And for those of you who did not raise your hands, I've been fired before, I've been laid off before. Happens to the best of us, happens to all of us. It's very easy to assume, oh, she's sitting there, she doesn't know all the struggles that I'm going through. She doesn't have a baby to take care of, she doesn't have a husband to take care of, she hasn't been separated, she doesn't have to be a caregiver, the list goes on. And I was the same person. But we all go through shit. Life is just challenging. And I think it is very important, just like you forgave that engineer for taking production down, you need to forgive yourself. You just need to learn from it. That's it. There actually isn't even an aspect of forgiving. So we've all been there. We've all been through that. We're all in the same journey. And I think that is what you need to remember. It hurts when you get laid off. It hurts when you get fired. When I got fired, I could not believe that I got fired. I'm such a kick-ass leader. Who in their right mind would fire me? Happens. That's okay. Their loss. But you pick up the pieces and you go from it. If there's a learning to be had, there's a learning to be had. You learn from that. And yes, I've made mistakes and I learned from them. I will admit I learned much later. I should have learned immediately. I mostly just assign blame, which is okay. and yeah, you interview a lot, you get rejected a lot, and that's okay as well. You just learn. But at the end of the day, I just knew that I would eventually find a job, and I did. So please don't think that failure is unique to you. Each and every one of us has been there, and don't internalize it, making yourself feel like you don't deserve to be there. You absolutely do. If need be, talk to your network, talk to your trusted friends, and pick up the pieces and keep going.
Oh, absolutely. I think I always talk about test and learn rather than test and fail. Right? For me, I think one of the times when I could have spoken out and I knew something was wrong and I didn't speak because I didn't want to kind of, be the bullshit one that always says, no, this is not right. And so I didn't speak out and it wasn't right. Right, so I think that was the moment where kind of, for me, it was like two things. One was actually, particularly I think as a CTO, you do upset people because you tell them things are, you are the guardian and the custodian of the technical estate, right? So you do have to make decisions that upset people, right? So and secondly was trust yourself.
Yes.
Right, because if something feels wrong and it smells wrong, even if it's not wrong, it still needs to be prodded and poked a bit to make sure you're really happy with it.
Yep, 100%.
I think you've segued us beautifully, and thank you, Sarah, into our final topic of the night, which is all about advocation. And I think advocation sometimes is, I shouldn't say nice things about, I'll be seen in a particular way, I'll be seen as bullshit. But I think probably everyone here has at some point advocated for themselves, and everyone in this room, if you haven't, you should. So I want to come to Hema first. I mean, what was your experience like in learning to be that person who can truly advocate for yourself at work?
It's hard to do, I would say. It's never easy to blow your own trumpet, quite frankly, because we're taught, I think, from a very early age not to do that, because it's gives you an ego. And there's a fine line between, I think, advocating for something that you believe you can do, and it's belief, I think, that's the important thing here. If you have belief in yourself, that you have the capability, that you are doing the right thing, and that you definitely want it, you need to have that hunger. You know, if that hunger and that drive is there, then you are doing the right thing. And we can't possibly expect that, you know, the people sitting next to us are going to stand up for us if we stay quiet. Why would they? You know, absolutely, and no offence, right? I have no problems at all with any men whatsoever, but why do I need a man to tell me that I'm really good at what I do? I can do that, right? So I think initially in my career it was very hard to do, but then when I figured out that nobody else was going to do it for me, it was like, okay, well, I need to be that person. I need to make sure that I do it. I have a voice, and I've learned to use it, and I've learned to use it well. And the lesson I would give you is that that's your biggest asset. That is the biggest tool that you've got in your weaponry, which is your voice, right? Don't silence yourself. Don't be quiet if somebody else is being treated badly. And, you know, Sarah said something else as well there about trusting yourself. You know, once upon a time, God made men and God made women. And then God gave women gut instinct, but they don't use it, right? That is the best thing you could ever have. If your gut tells you that something is wrong, it's bloody wrong. Listen to it. Hone those skills that you have naturally rather than just going with stuff, right? I'm joking, right? I have a very strange sense of humour, but it's true. Every time I failed in life, it's been when I haven't listened to my gut, and I have made lots of mistakes. Making mistakes sometimes is fun. You learn a lot as well from it. So self-awareness is also very important as you progress through your career and your personal life. It's okay if something goes wrong. Nobody's perfect, but you have to stop and have that moment of self-awareness of, okay, I really messed up, I really screwed up. What do I need to do and change differently for the next time? Then it's worth it.
So what I would tell you, someone told me this very early in my career, right, is to set aside time every week, right, to think about you, your career, what you've done well, what you could be doing better. But actually that's part of advocating for yourself, is giving, because we're all really good at going, oh, I've got all these things, that's my to-do list is all this long and I've got all these things to do, and I'll just think about my career next week, right? So I would tell you, set aside the time, right, because no one else will do it. It's a bit like you said, no one else will do it, so make sure you do it for yourself.
And I would say when you set aside that time on a weekly basis, think of what a straight white man would do. Your perspective will change, I'm telling you. I just talked about this earlier with somebody here. Act like them for a second, channel them in you, and then figure out how you would go talk to your boss, talk to your manager, talk to your CEO about yourself and about you.
And just to take us home, because I think a lot of this conversation has been about getting to the CTO position, and when we talk about advocating in that context, where how can I advocate to get there? And I think, Sarah, you have an interesting point about you're sort of advocating in a direction, and then you might go, well, actually, what do I want? And for you, kind of, what was that journey like? You mentioned before that you sort of took a breath and went, you know, reflected, and when you advocated for yourself, it wasn't necessarily pushing towards that CTO role.
So, yes, and I think this comes back to the squiggly career that people talked about earlier. Sometimes you go and do things and they're not quite what you thought they would be. And particularly in very large corporations, you can end up a long way away from customers or whatever. But in Amazon, I found myself, you know, starting to watch a technology revolution happening without being part of it. Because I was doing budgets, I was doing strategy, I was doing planning, I was doing all that stuff, right? You know, spreadsheet hell and all that sort of stuff. And yes, we still have spreadsheets 40 years after. Right? So, and at that point I thought, no, I'm in the wrong job. And knowing when it is the wrong job, you know, because CTO, by the way, there is no standard CTO job definition, right? You do it differently to me and I do it differently to you. So you know, actually, at some point, you may say, this is not the job I want. And having the courage to walk away is really important.
Fantastic note to end on. We, I believe, have 5-10 minutes for some questions. So raise your hand. Does anyone have a question? I think, do we have a roaming mic anywhere? Are you going to take my mic?
I think we are the roaming mics.
Oh, okay. Welcome, roaming Mike. His name actually isn't Mike, but it would be great if it was. We have one question over here.
Hello. First, just thank you for sharing this amazing thoughts. I do believe, I think you must have a tons of experience, interesting experience during the period from employee to employer, or from CTO to employer. I'm really wondering if you got a time machine and you can use it just only for once. During this period, what kind of thing, what kind of experience or story or mistake you want to adjust?
Wow.
Oh, that's a great question. I would say the one thing I would change is, I think I mentioned this earlier, the one thing I would change is I would find a community and lean on that community a whole lot more than I did throughout my career journey.
It's a tough question. Actually, there's a few moments, but I think probably the moment for me would be going back to the very first time that I had to have a difficult conversation with an employee in my team, and I really struggled with it. I didn't sleep for about 3 nights beforehand. I was really worried. I didn't know how to deliver the message. I was a bit of a wreck, but I suffered in silence. I didn't go and ask for help. I didn't go and ask my manager and say, you've told me to do this, but actually you haven't told me how to do it, and I'm not comfortable with doing it. And I really messed it up. I really messed it up, big time, right? But thankfully we managed to resolve it a couple of weeks later. But if I was going to go back, that would be the very first moment where I would say, go and ask for help. You know, I think typically women struggle to go and say, I can't do this, or I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? Because we think we have to be really good at everything. We think we have to be super women, right? And we don't. It's okay. You can take the cape off now and then, right? It needs a dry clean. So it's okay. Go and ask for help.
Do we have any other questions in the room? One at the back.
Thank you. So I just became a CTO in the last 2-3 months.
Ooh!
Thank you. I'll say I kind of hate it. But I don't know if that's because I hate it or because the transition is very hard. And so I'm curious if you could go back and tell yourself when, like, in that transition right before you became a CTO from senior management or whatever your role is right beforehand, what would you tell that younger version of yourself in order to ease that transition?
I would start with actually ask questions, right? More questions, and tell people who don't know what they're talking about, right? I leapt into the insurance industry, right? I thought, yeah, I must know insurance because it's kind of, we all have insurance, don't we? No, right? I mean, it's very different when you get into the detail of it and you're talking to business people who speak a language that you don't know. So, and I should have spent more time going, you know, help me to be effective, right? So find the people who can help you and get them to, you know, basically build your knowledge.
And I would say, Tara, depends on what the definition of that it is. Right? You're in a great position to define your role. I think we talked earlier about there's no two CTOs are the same. Their roles are not the same. So you figure out what parts of your job you like, you keep those. What parts of your job you don't like, or you're not so great at, that you don't care about becoming great at, and you surround yourself, you hire those people. You identify those gaps and you hire those people so you can lean on them.
She's absolutely right.
I think we've got time for one more question just at the front. Cool, okay, right, I'm going to do it myself. International Women's Day.
Hiya. So, as you made your transition from individual contributor to engineering manager up to CTO, how did you get that business side knowledge?
Question, great. I can keep going, but I think somebody else should
I
go.
can take that one. I started on the business side, so for me the transition was actually the other way round. And for me it was a number of things. So it was personal learning, it was getting a really good network and going and asking people. I became that person who was really irritating. I bought everyone coffees, I had lots of one-to-ones, I used to just go and perch on people's desks to ask the question. Like, I can do theory, but I get bored really quickly, right? So show me, I'm that person, show me, tell me, explain to me how this works. So I learned that way. I went to lots of industry events. I became very nosy, and at one point just had an inbox that was crazy, where I was just reading newsletters and updates, trying to figure things out. And then I started writing my own stuff, right? So the best way of understanding something is for me to write it back down again, or I then transitioned into pictures, right? So words are great, I love words, but actually I'm a visual person. So for me to understand something, I started to draw diagrams, and then I used to go and get them validated, right? Is this the right thing? Have I understood this properly? If not, teach me what I need to know, right? How do I figure out the missing Lego brick? So for me, it was a combination of all of those.
Let me give you a different perspective. Right, two things. One is go and sit. If you've got a customer-facing industry, go and listen to your customers.
Yep.
I used to go to the call centres, listen into the calls, claims calls, sales calls, etc. Really fascinating insight into and the second thing I would say is find something to fix, right? And I know it sounds weird, but as soon as you have something to fix, whether it's an operational problem, whether it's a process problem or whatever, you start to work with people, and particularly if it's kind of at that intersection of business and IT, then it becomes really important, and then you get to understand it, right? And as CTO, finally, third thing, what have the Romans ever done for us? But apart from that, strategy, right? A CTO has to think strategically. You go and find the chief strategy officer or whatever they're called, right? Because they should be you should be sitting down together to help build the strategy.
In addition to everything that both of these ladies said, I would say simple, 2 questions. Why? Why are we doing what we're doing? You can ask that at every single level. IC, EM, director, VP. Why are we doing what we're doing? And the answer you want to get to is what business goals is it helping achieve? And second is which KPIs is it moving? And those KPIs need to be business metrics, not performance metrics.
So I think that about takes us home. So I'd like to invite everyone to give a round of applause to our incredible panel.